Going to learn the demand analysis, that what is demand forecasting, what is all about demand, what are its types, what are the exceptions of demand where the law of demand doesn't apply, and what are the velocities of demand. So that comes under the demand analysis in detail. So today we will going to learn about it all. So let's begin a basic concepts that is demand. So what is all about demand is, what is the meaning of demand? Demand refers that any person who has a natural desire and have an ability to pay and a willingness to pay a specified price, a particular price to buy any product, that's called demand. So in case of demand, there are three main conditions. The person has a natural desire to buy a product. Second condition, that the consumer has a willingness to pay. That is a second condition. The third condition, the consumer has an ability to pay for a specified price to buy that product. So if these three condition has been fulfilled, then that it's called demand. If these three condition wouldn't be fulfilled, there is no demand of any consumer. So if a consumer has an ability, has a natural desire, has a willingness to pay, an ability to pay a specific price for a product, that's called demand. So when we talk about demand, so there are three main conditions, and if a consumer follow these three conditions, that is natural desire, willingness to pay, ability to pay, that's called demand. So let's talk about the law of demand. So it's very simple. If we talk about, if you are able to understand what is demand, so law states first there is an inverse relationship between the demand and its price. That's called law of demand. So there is a law has been made that there is an inverse relationship between the quantity demanded of a product and its price. So in other words, it would say the demand would get increase or decrease if the price falls or declines, and that's called law of demand. When we talk about demand, the next concept is demand schedule. So any table which is showing the quantities of the various goods and which a consumer is willing and able to buy at a particular price during a given period, that's called demand schedule. So if you see on the screen, the one of the example has been mentioned, that is the price of Coke. It is 200 ml in Indian rupees. So if you look up the price will goes down. The price is falling actually. And if the price is falling, it means the demand of that particular product, that is Coke, it's increasing. So that's called the law of demand. This is called the inverse relationship between the price of a Coke and the demand for a Coke by the consumers. So that's called the law of demand, and that tabulation or tabular representation, it's called demand schedule. The next concept is demand curve. Any curve which showing the total quantity of a product where the consumer are willing and able to pay a particular specified price and holding the all other factors which influence demand is are constant. That's called demand curve. And demand curve, it doesn't mean it always be a downward sloping or it's downwarding. No, it also you can say, as the law of demand says, there is an inverse relationships. So according to the law of demand, the curve of the demand would be downward sloping. Why? Because it shows an inverse relationship between the price and the demand of the commodity, and that's you can see on the screen that demand curve, it's downward sloping, that point A to B. So these points A and B are the basically the key points where the demand is totally downward sloping. That is quantity demanded or quantities will be shown on the x-axis and the price will be shown on the y-axis. So accordingly, the shape diagrammatically has been shown that is downward sloping as the law of demand states inverse relationship, and that's the main reason the shape of the demand it's downward slope. The next is change in demand. It could be the shifts of the demand. There would be an increase in the demand. There would be the decrease in the demand. There would be the extension of the demand. There would be the contraction of the demands. So here we'll understand the concepts, the changes in demand, whether the shifts of demand or the extension or contraction of demand. So before I come to extension and contraction of demand, it is needy to understand shifts in demand, the concept of shifts in demand. Shifts of the demand curve, it would be rightward, it would be upward, it would be increased. You can use any of the above words. So we talk about the leftward, downward, and decrease. That is, if we talk about leftward, the demand is declining, the demand is decreasing. So if we talk about the shift of the demand curve, rightward and upward are increasing. So we talk about the demand is actually increasing. So there is a shift of the demand curve which is called increase, which is called upward in other words as well. So when we, as I already told you, the curve of the demand curve, it's downward sloping. So if there is an increase in demand, then the demand curve shifts to the rightward. This is a demand, this is a demand curve, there is an increase, it's rightward shift. There is a decrease in demand, the leftward shifts. So it and in the curve, the demand cannot show in the arrow, that is the increasing slope or decreasing slope. No, it is the shifts where we put it into arrows. The rightward shift, right arrows will be shown. In the leftward shift, left arrows if the demand declines. So this is a way through the diagrammatic presentation that how to define the shifts of the demand curves. The next one is the next concept, which is a very important concept, that is the extension or contraction in demand. So this curve, which is always shows, it refers a movement along the demand curve just due to a price. This curve called a contraction in demand. Why it is contraction? So it refers. What is the meaning of the contraction? If there is a increase in the price due to which a decline in the quantity, that's called contraction. I repeat once again, if there is if there is a increase, if the increase in price is more than the quantity demanded of a commodity, is called contraction. I repeat once again in a very basic sense. What is the meaning of contraction? Contraction means if increase in price is more than the quantity demand of a commodity, it's called contraction, and vice versa. If we talk about vice versa, it's called extension. If the decrease in price, if there is a decrease in price, you can say is more than the quantity demanded, it's called extension. So this is a way that how to show up contraction in demand. If you can see in the diagram that increase in price, the gap of the increase in price is more than the quantities of the product. It's called contraction. right? If there is a decrease of the price is more than the quantities, there is an extension. Or in other words, there is the decrease in price is, is less than the difference of the quantities is also called extension. So the meaning will remains the same. The expression of words could be the change. The next one is demand functions. So automatically, why I'm saying demand function, because if you check up the law of demand rule says that there is an inverse relationship between the price and the demand of a commodity. But when we talk about demand function, we are not talking about the shapes of the demand. We are talking about the factors of the demand, with the factors which influence the demand actually, and that's called the functions of demand. That means the quantity demanded is a functions of all the factors of product, of all the factors which influence the demand is actually called demand function. So demand function refers that how much a quantity will be purchased at a prevailing price of that commodity and related commodities, with all of the factors which influence demand. So what are the factors here? Price of a related goods, income of the consumer, price of the good X, right? Technology would say taste and preference of the consumer, expected income, expected price, advertising cost or advertisement cost. These are all the factors which influence the demand, and that's called a function of all the factors which influence demand, or in other words called that demand function refers the quantities which a function of its determinants influencing demand. That's also called demand function. These are the determinants, means as I told, is the factors which influence the demand. So this is a very key points, a positive, negative, whether the demand would increase or decrease. So that it is very easy to elaborate the terms. So the first one is price of the good. It is a negative relationship. Why it is negative relationship? Because it follows the rule of demand. The law of demand will always shows a negative or inverse relationship between the price and demand. For example, if the price of Coke declines, then the quantity of Pepsi would increase. What is called? It's we are talking about the price of one good, but automatically it increases the demand of the another good, and which shows the inverse relationship between these products. Let's talk about the price of related goods. When we talk about the price of related goods, it refers to two types of goods, the mainly related goods, substitute goods, and complementary goods. So when we talk about substitute goods are those goods which serves the same purpose for another good. And the particular relationship between that two goods, it's negative relationship. But when we talk about the complementary goods, where complementary goods are those goods which adds the value to another good, and that's and used together, that's called complementary goods. Like for example, french fries and ketchup. Let's talk about substitute goods. Let's talk about Coke and Pepsi, Limca and Fanta. Okay, I want to taste a Limca but it's not available, then I could taste a Fanta. That's called substitute goods. That having the same purpose that serve for another good. If the first good is not available. So that's why substitute goods have a negative influence and the complementary goods have a positive influence. Because if about complementary goods, then if the one good is available, then definitely the second good will also be available because they use together. They are incomplete if one good is not available. If the French fries is not available, if the French fries is not available, then ketchup would have no use. If the ketchup is not available and French fries is available, then also it's no use. If the both are available, then it's called complementary goods because they use together. Without French fry, without sauces, French fries has become incomplete. So that's why it becomes complementary goods, and that shows a positive relationship of demand. The next one is consumer income. As I already indicated, it's positive relationship. Why is positive relationship? Because it shows where the income, that any demand of a good by a consumer increases according to their increase in its income, and that's why it's positive income. If a person having an income which goes declining, then how he increase in buying, how he fulfill its wants towards buying a product, it cannot be fulfilled. So if the income is low, automatically their demand or quantities of products would get low. So that's why it refers to consumers' income. It shows a positive relationship between the income and the quantities demanded of a product. Next one is taste preference, fashion habit. So it always talk about here it's taste and preference, but I would also include the other factors here, that is fashion and habits. Why? Because taste and preferences depending upon the fashion and habits only. Fashion, it depends. Okay, if the taste preference also influence, because it keeps changes according to the time period, and it is very difficult to predict that on what basis the taste has become changed or preference become changed towards the fashions or their own habitual needs. So that's why it also influence badly. The next one is population. If the population size would get increased, then definitely there would be a positive relationship between the demand and it's the size of the population. So if the population increased, automatically the demand would get increased. The more and more people buy the any varieties of the products. So that's why it's a positive relationship. The next one is money circulation. Money circulation will also be positive relationship. If the circular flow of money would get increasing, then definitely the demand of the products or quantities of a product would get also increased. So if the money would get increased or its value would get increased, definitely the quantity or a demand for that particular product would get also increased. The next one is value of money. Definitely, the value of money would also be fluctuate, whether it would get increase and decrease according to the market situation. The next one is weather condition. Here there is an example is tender coconut. So obviously in the winter season, in the summer season, not in winter. In the summer season, coconut water is very helpful for the health of a person. So when it comes to the weather conditions, the coconut has a huge demand of it. Definitely, it's a positive relation according to the conditions of the weather. The next one is advertisement. So it always shows an inverse relationship. Why? Because the quantities demanded of a products will direct or indirectly depends upon the advertisement cost. So if the advertisement cost is more, so definitely the automatically the demands would get influenced whether increase or decrease, but I could not say it's more increase. So that's why it fluctuates, or it could be inverse, or I could say it could be positive as well. So if the advertising cost would get increased, so definitely the quantities of the products would get increased, but that quantities of the products or goods will depends upon its nature. So that's why in the particular quantity, the demand would get fluctuate, whether it could get positive, it could negative or inverse as well, but depending upon the nature of the product. The next one is consumer future price expectation. Here we talk about a disaster. So when we talk about disaster here, we always talk about the inverse relationship between the consumer future price, the expectations towards the consumer price and the demand. The next one is government policy. So when we talk about government policy, here is an example is taxation. So taxation, there is an inverse relationship. But why there is an inverse relationship? If a consumer has bought a product, a cell phone, let's say, and the taxes is automatically has been charged, so automatically the amount would get decreased, and that's the main reason. If the tax is more and more taxation would be charged, the demand for that cell phone or any other product would get decreased. And that's why there is an inverse relationship between the government policy and the demand of of a particular product due to the taxes charged. The next one is credit facilities. So definitely credit facilities, it also increases the demand, because the more and more the credit has been granted by the banks to the consumers, accordingly their wants would get emerged and they start buying the new products for its own purposes. And that's why there is a positive relationship between the credit facility and the demand of a particular product. For example, washing machine. It's a washing machine, is a Simpson washing machine, or color television, which is a mainly used for the consumers. The next one is multiplicity of the uses of goods. Here we are talking about milk, here we are talking about sugar, here we're talking about coffee, here we talking about the fruit creams. So if they have a multiple uses, then definitely its demand would also get increased, and that's the main reason there is a positive relationship between the multiplicity of the uses of goods, the more and more uses of goods, and its demand. So these are the factors, all factors which influence the demand. These are the all determinants which also definitely influence the demand in each way. Next one is type of demand. The first one is direct demand, where the particular consumer consumes a final product, that is direct demand. Indirect demand, the consumer couldn't be able to consume a final product, and if they have a unable to pay a specified price during that particular time, so that's why it's indirect demand. That is cotton, fabric. So these are the examples of the direct and indirect demand. When we talk about direct demand and autonomous demand, when we talk about autonomous demand, so a consumer must have a natural desire to buy, to basically to buy a product, or to use to satisfy their own needs, and that's called mobile. So mobiles has an autonomous demand, because every human being has a natural desire to buy a new mobile. So every company launches a new versions, a new products of its own mobiles. So as a result, the human beings is also has a demand or natural desires to consume or to buy that product, that is mobiles, and that's called an autonomous demands. So there is a difference between these two terms. Autonomous has a natural desires. Drive doesn't have a natural desires. So why? Because drive demand where particular products will be used or dependent to another product, that is called drive demand. For example, car and petrol. If the petrol is if the petrol is available, car can easily take a long ride. So that's called a drive demand. With such demand that deals or independent one product, where one product is independent to another product, and that's called the drive demand, which is used combinedly or used jointly. The third one is durable and non-durable goods. So when we talk about durable goods, it's used more than a once. For example, color television, black and white. So when we talk about the traditional lights, a black and white television, the more and more than 100 times would be used, and that's called a durable. Non-durable, it's a single use, like for example, injection, bandit. So that's called the non-durable goods. The third one, the fourth category is firm demand and industry demand. So when we talk about firm demand, we are obviously in an organization demand refers to any of the one to consume any of the one product. So when we talk about the industry demand, here we are talking about not for one firm, it's a group of firms, it's a group of companies. Like that's called, for example, steel. Steel needs every company, a group of companies. Cement needs every company or by every person to build up a home, to build up a, you can say, factory, and that's called industrial demand. And one of the example is steel, cement, soaps, face wash, detergent powder, Vim bar, all that. That is called the firm demand, where every organization and every individual unit needs such products. The next one is total market and market segment. So when we talk about the total market, here we're talking about the products, pencil, pen, that have a total market of a one reason or a state. But when we talk about the market segment, we target the market either for the kids. According to the kids, I make such products. According to the toys, like for example, toys goods for the kids, pencils for the kids, pens or you can say gel pens for the adults. That's called market segment. Short run and long run demand. Short run demand, it's basically runs for a short period of time where the demand ends in a short run only. Long run demand will always have a demand for a long period of time. So where the products is used and by multiple or a long period of time, but short run has a very short period of time, maybe weeks with a month. So accordingly, the demand generates and edit in the short run. So that's why it's called short run and long run demand. The next one is joint demand. Joint is we can the products which can be joint usually and used jointly. That is car and petrol, diesel and car, like that is called joint demand. We talk about milk and tea powder. So that is called the joint demand. Bread and butter. Next one, Maggie and masala, Maggie masala. So that's called joint demands. So next one is composite demand. Here, any product which used several bases, like iron for several uses. We use the iron salt for cooking the various dishes in the kitchen, and that's called the composite demand. Price demand. Price demand refers to a proportionate change in demand due to a change in its price. Income demand, a proportionate change in demand due to the change in income. Gross demand, that is a proportionate change in the price of one good, that is in the price of one good by the due to a change in the price of another good. That's called the gross demand. So now the next concept is market demand. So market demand is a horizontal summation of the demand curves of all the consumers in the market. So if you talk on a diagrammatic diagram, the first two diagrams are the individual diagrams. That is individual A demand curve and the individual B demand curve. And when we talk about the third demand curve, it's a combination of individual A demand curve and the individual B demand curve, and that's called the market demand curve of combining or summating of A demand curve and B demand curve, and that's called the market demand curve. Now we talk about the exceptional demand curves where law of demand has no role in it. For one of the example is Giffen goods. Giffen goods is a Robert Giffen of Ireland observed some special type of inferior goods like potato, and that's called the Giffen paradox where demand has no role. Potato is always be have a full month's demand or 12 months demand. So there is no law of demand to be followed. There is no inverse relationship. There is no positive relationship with the respective of their prices. So price have no role and demand. The price has no role. The demand has no role. So that's called the Giffen paradox. In other words. The next one is auspicious consumption well-in effect. So we are talking about the status goods or like diamonds, jewelries, which have no value of demand, and accordingly, if need arises, consumer buy it, otherwise no need. So that's why such type of consumptions or goods that's the word has been denoted that is well Veblen effect or auspicious consumption. We talk about the standards of living. We talk about the standards of goods, status of the goods which is known or identified by its status, and such term will call the conspicuous consumption and well-being effect. The next one is conspicuous necessities. The purchase of smartphones owing to lifestyle. When you want to show up your lifestyle, when to show up your living standard, that's if you buy mostly people's things like that. That having a top-rated mobile phone, smartphone, will show your luxury lifestyle. So where demand has no role. So where the lifestyle when to show up just by buying a smartphone, it's no role of demand, and that's kind of necessities is called conspicuous necessities. Ignorance has no demand. It always denotes to a brand orientation, how the brand name has been built up. For example, let's take in an example, the company trust on that particular product, where demand has no role. Emergencies like sanitizer during COVID-19, future changes stock prices, in future what basis the stock would get increase or decrease, change in the fashion. In the traditional CD would be the use in the computers, but see the present time there's no CDs to be required. There is a flash disc, flash cameras, even the new technologies of scanning the documents and photos. That is called the change in fashion. Demonstration effect, the definitely the low income groups imitating the consumption pattern of high income groups. So demonstration effect is always talk about the groups, the level of groups, the sections of the society's groups, income groups. They always have a difference between the two level of groups, and where demand has no role in it. Next one is snow effect, that is the unique products. If where the your pride and humor would show up, having a unique products where nobody has such products, but you have such products. So demand has no boundary where and such effect where the pride and humor effect would come up from you, and that's called the snow effect. The next is speculative goods, outdated good and seasonal goods as shares, CDs, and ice cream. So seasonal good would stand for ice cream. It comes into summers rather than winters. Outdated goods, CDs would say speculative goods, shares. Because speculative is in terms of expectations, terms of assumptions, predictions, and accordingly you invest something on shares, and that's called speculative goods. Goods in short supplies, in artificial jewelries. I could give a good example in that goods in short supply. It's called in artificial goods. Nobody wants artificials, but in a certain level or point of time, the demand has no role, but still the people buy it for their own use, which is called the antique products for which has a very short supply. If we talk about the paintings, the you can say home decorating paintings, such goods are also in short supply. If you go to the Flipkart, if you go to the Snapdeal, if you go to the Amazon, if you see the antique products, that the goods are not available because that has demand. The demand is no more actually in the present time. So such type of goods are called short supply. Next one is the next concept is elasticity of demand. Elasticity of demand is the rate of responsiveness, that how the demand would get increase or decrease just due to a changes in price, and that's called elasticity. Elasticity is a magnitude, that how the demand would give response due to a changes in prices. That's called elasticity of demand. There are three main categories of elasticity of demand: price, income, and gross elasticity. So when we talk about the price elasticity, there is a proportionate when it refers to a changes in the quantity demanded due to the changes in price, and that's called price elasticity of demand. The formula is already given: the change in quantity by quantity divide by change in price by price, and mathematically the formula is already shown on the screen. Change in quantity means Q2 minus Q1. Change in price means P2 minus P1. What is P2? P2 the price of a next unit, that next unit, and the quantity is a P. Q2 is a quantity of a next unit. That means second unit. There are three main types, that is the price elasticity determinants: the better substitutes, longer period, and the is lower for the necessities goods comparison to luxuries goods. So if we talk about the better substitute like Coke and Pepsi, Coke and Fanta, tea and coffee, with a higher price elasticity of demand. Longer period, that is the higher elasticity of price, but longer period price fluctuate, demand fluctuates. As a result, elasticity of demand will also get higher. Elasticity of price elasticity of demand is lower if for necessities goods and comparison to the luxuries goods. So luxury goods has a price elasticity of demand because the luxury goods have a high price level. When we talk elasticity of demand, it also depends upon the various factors like nature of the commodity, extent of use, range of substitutes, income level, proportion of income spent on a commodity, urgency of product, postpone of purchase, durability of a product, price purchase frequency, and so on. So these are the factors, the other factors which also influence the price elasticity of demand. When the main the factors which influence more, that is better substitute, longer period, necessities, and luxuries goods. These are the types of the price elasticity of demand. The relatively elastic demand, where the decrease in price is less than the increase in demand. What is relatively elastic demand? It refers a decrease in price is less than the increase in quantity demanded. It's called relatively elastic demand. What is perfectly elastic demand? Where where there is no change in price and quantity would become infinite. There's a change in quantity which stands infinite. That's called perfectly elastic demand, where there is no change in the price level, but infinite changes in the quantity. It becomes perfectly elastic demand. When we talk about the relatively elastic demand, which is you can say less than one, it means the change in price is more than the change in quantity. It's very simple. The inelastic, okay, change in price is more than change in quantity. Okay, elastic, that means change in price is less than the change in quantity. That's for elastic. But when we talk about the perfectly inelastic demand, where the quantity would become constant and the price would get increased or would get decreased or increase accordingly, and that's called the perfectly inelastic demand. Next one is unit elastic demand, where the change in price is equal to change in quantity, and that's called the unit elastic of demand, where the shape is you can say in a downward sloping curve. That is called the unit elastic of demand, where the change in price and change in quantity is almost one or is almost equal to one. That's called the unit elastic of demand. Next one is income elasticity of demand, where you can say it shows a positive relationship between a change in quantity demanded and the change in income. For example, if there is an increase in income, there is an increase in demand. So, but mathematically, how to show that refers to a ratio of proportionate change in quantity demanded due to a proportionate change in its income. So when it's talk about mathematical formula, that is change in quantity by Q by divide by change in income by income, that's called income elasticity of demand, and that the symbol of income elasticity of demand is EI. I stands for income, E stands for elasticity. There are five main types of income elasticity: zero, negative, unitary, elastic, and inelastic. So when we talk about, it shows a positive relationship. So zero income, there is does not make any difference in demand. There is no change in demand actually. It is equal to one. Negative income, automatically if their income is low, the demand is low. Unitary, if your income is equal, your demand and income would become equal. That means E is equal to 1. Elastic income, that means if your income increases, so definitely your demand would get increased, but in a uh, in a more proportion. Like for example, it's written over here, your income, change in income increases, that means the demand for that commodity is more than the change in income. Inelastic demand, and that's called elastic demand, income elasticity. When we talk about the inelastic income elasticity, that means it's an inverse of elastic income elastic income elasticity. So if there is a change in income, like income increases but less portion in change in income, that's called inelastic income elasticity. That means the change in income increases the demand for a commodity, but at a lesser percentage than the change in the income. That's called inelastic income elasticity. These are the shapes, income elasticity for superior and inferior goods. So when we talk about superior goods, it's a specialty goods. Inferior goods, it's a very non-specialty goods like t-shirts, shirts, all that stuff, clothing. So super specialty or superior goods, we talk about the iPhone, we talk about the new washing machines, washing machine, Samsung washing machine, refrigerator, LG, Samsung watch. That's called superior goods. So automatically the positive relationship for the superior and inferior is a negative relationship, because inferior goods needs automatically, it's a very low in prices, so definitely their income depends upon the negative. Your income is low, you buy inferior goods. Your income is high, you buy superior goods. And that's the shapes of the demand curves. So that is in respect of their income, superior is a positive and inferior is a negative. Cross elasticity of demand. So cross elasticity of demand means it refers to a ratio of a proportionate change in the quantity demanded by a proportionate change in its income. So what was the mathematical formula is a change of quantity demanded of a product A, B or C by quantity of a product A by change in the income, you can say, of any of the consumer, or divided by any of the consumer of the income, that is equal to gross elasticity of demand. Or in other words, we can say when it respect to the prices, that it refers to a ratio of a proportionate change in quantity demanded of a product X due to a proportionate change in the demand of another product. So that is also called the cross elasticity of demand. When we talk about the types, it's substitutes and complementary. So here we positive or a negative relationship when it comes to the cross elasticity of demand. When we talk about significance in production, or when in the production, price fixation and distribution, international trade, so all these questions to be come up over here, that deciding the quantity, what the quantity is to be produced, how are prices to be fixed up, not only the cost basis but also the prices of the related goods. In distribution, when, where, and how much to distribute. International, where and what to export. In foreign exchange, which currencies are actually needed in which country as well. For nationalizing an industry, and how the national income will get interest for will get increased for a certain industries. In public finance also, that how the credit facilities to be provided to the company in what ways actually. And that's called, in these particular perspective, the concept of elasticity of demand will be used. In the gross elasticity, there is no concept of a proportionate change in income. The gross elasticity, it's a ratio of a proportionate change in the quantity demanded of product A by a proportionate change in the price of product B. So if we talk about quantity A and price of B, that is the change of quantity of demanded of product A by product A, divide by change in the prices of product B by price of B, and that's called the cross elasticity, where the cross elasticity of demand, we are substituting complementary goods, or these are called the related goods. So that is comes under cross elasticity of demand. There is a typing mistake error has been mentioned. So this is not a change in income, that is a change in the prices of the related goods. The next one is demand forecasting. Forecasting is the estimation of a future situation in any given situation. So forecasting is just an estimation whether what would be the price, what would be the market scenario would be possible in the future, because it is based on, it is for the future and for the benefit for the future, and that's called forecasting. It is a tool, an ultimate tool for a best optimal decision making. So there are two types of decisions, that is short run decision and the long run decisions. So when we talk about short run decisions, these are the following parameters. When we talk about the major long run decision, this is also the following parameters. So short run decisions is the purchase of inputs, how to maintain the economic level of inventories, how to set up the sales targets, distribution of network, how to manage the working capital of the company, how to fix up the price policy and the promotion policy, and that all decisions to be taken in the short run. These are the following parameters that to be taken for a long-term purposes: how to expand the existing capacity, how to diversify the product mix, what would be the growth of acquisition, how to change the location of the plant, what would be the capital issues occurred in the company premises, what should be the long-term borrowings of the company as well, to plan the manpower resources of the company. So that would be, these decisions would be taken for a long run, and these are the major parameters and for the short and the long run purposes. And in that perspectively, the forecast tool will be used for the future. Why the forecast, why the demand estimation and forecast is required? So these are the main three reasons: to predict the future demand and estimate its effect on the operation of the market and firm; how to assess the magnitude that demand will assume some future point of time. It also helps to reduce uncertainty, prepare a production plan, how to allocate the resources and formulate the strategies in marketing. And these three main reasons where the demand forecasting and demand estimation is required. These are the stages that how to demand and how to estimate the demand or forecast. First, to identify the market, which market do you want, or identify the product as well. It would be the you can say perfect market, you can say monopoly market, monopolistic market, imperfect market, you could say. So once you identify the market, just collect the data of in the market. Then what scenarios exactly the market stand for, what type of products will be more in demand in the market. So just collect the data. So once you collect the data, then select the method. The method of forecasting is, I already told, that's quantitative and quantitative, mathematical methods and statistical methods. So accordingly, the method would be selected, and once the appropriate method would be selected, just implement that method. And once to implement that method, you just evaluate the method and accordingly forecast and validate that forecast for the future purpose. These are the factors to be considered in demand estimation. The first one is time frame. It should be the short run, medium term, and long term. Level of the forecasting, it would be the individual unit, it would be the industry unit, it would be the national level unit. The third one is journal or product specific forecast. So it depends upon the product basis or the market basis, the forecast to be done. Then demand for new and already established products. So what would be the new and already established products to be required? Types of products would be the producer goods, consumer goods, or the services to be required. So it depends on what type of products would be required. So where the demand is to estimate and consider. Product and market specific like competition, market condition, consumer psychology, which is one of the most challenging tasks. So accordingly, these are the factors required where the demand estimation is needed. Types of forecasting methods, as these are the methods, statistical or you can say mathematical, we can say a qualitative and quantitative methods. So these are the methods over here: survey of buyer intention, Delphi method, expert opinion, collective opinion, naive models, smoothing techniques, time series, trend projection, controlled experiment, and the judgmental approach. So these are the qualitative method: executive opinion, that is expert opinion, high level executive, group of measures when meet and collectively share their opinion to forecast for demand. Market research is a very systematic method where the questionnaire, surveys, sampling, any information together about the customer's preference and accordingly forecast the demand. Delphi method, where the demand forecast is like a product, where the group of experts and where meet or maintain and you can say collect the gather the information and accordingly particular coordinator of that expert send data and questions to the experts and the comments we share discuss among the large group and accordingly forecast and demand. So Delphi method is that it's that method which will be used in a situation where the group of experts which group of expert will be sampled, will have a the you can see the responses of the questionnaires which has been sampled, and accordingly the responses will be shared to a large group of you can see employees, so that accordingly the decisions would be taken accurately. And this process is actually very time consuming, which is also the one of the limitation of this method. Quantitative method, time series models and casual, which is called as statistical methods. Here, time series, we always talk about the past patterns of demand and predict the future demand based on such patterns. It would be the moving average methods, it would be the seasonal methods, accordingly the time, according the demand forecast according to the time series. Casual models, these models assumes that any forecast variables related to other variables and the predictions to be based on of their all variables associations, and that's called the casual models. So these are the criteria to choose a method for forecasting: accuracy, its plausibility, durability, flexibility, and availability. So these are the criteria. It should be accurate. It should be very whenever it should need to stop the forecasting to immediately forecast, immediately you can say stop that possibility to stop the forecasting of a demand or to estimate the demand. Durability would be more than once or many times. Flexible, it is one of the flexible approach method to forecast the demand. That is these methods, quantitative and qualitative, where it always be available. So wherever to be used wherever, whenever needed. So these are the criteria to choose a method of forecasting and prediction. So definitely there is a clear distinction between the steady state forecasting, where the future is expected to be much like the past, and what if forecasting is a multivariate model to be used, that how to change the policy of the variables. So this is all about for today. There is another mathematical series where the mathematical formulas, even the mathematical questions, examples to be considered in the next session. So just for today, till time, till these are the basic scenario, detailed analysis of the demand and demand forecasting with mathematical questions will be considered in the next session. So till then, namaste to all.